All right. Well, welcome, Todd Mattson, to another From Here to There day, From Here to There day in our From Here to There speaker series. So, Todd is the CEO, and you're not the founder. You bought this company.
Yeah, not the founder.
Proline Racing, and I threw up their website just because it's a really cool website. So you're out of Banning, and you're making RC car components.
Right.
Right. So, Todd, could you just kind of give us, sort of the 101 on how you built this company? Because when you bought this company, it was really relatively small. It was kind of somebody's hobby, and you've grown it into a company that sells products around the world to a number of different distributors. You've got I don't know how many employees, but you do a lot of really cool things now. How do you describe that arc from beginning till now when you got involved?
Yeah, I'll go back before the company. I grew up with a dad who was really entrepreneurial. He probably didn't realize it because he's a college professor. He's a college professor, philosophy of history, his PhD in, so history teacher. But my dad was teaching at Gordon College, and he really wanted to start a college. And so actually, it all kind of starts with his idea to fund the college was actually to start a truck stop, which, Eric, I don't think is a great idea. But, the reality is that that's what he did. Him and his brother's a truck driver, and they started off on this journey to build a truck stop together. And a little bit like what you get down here in Milliken, I think it is, there's Truck Stops of America, kind of a truck stop like that. They started in Canaan, New York, kind of upstate New York on the way to Albany on the Mass Pike. And that was about when I was 5 or 6 years old. So that's kind of when it started, the entrepreneurial dream, And my dad, like I said, he was an educator, but he really understood business, and we talked a lot of business around the dinner table. And I would just say that just started a passion that I developed for business. So, we talked about just the challenges in the business with the bank, or challenges with people, what great people were doing, what people who were challenging the organization were doing, and that just started, just this dream of owning my own business someday. And I think I didn't realize it probably when I was 7 to 12, but when I was 12, he moved to head up a small Christian school, like a small private Christian school, and he was very entrepreneurial with that too. So bought properties and developed the school, and so that was really, that was a fun part of, so I think when I started going to college, I wasn't a great student. Actually, if you would talk to any of my high school teachers and you told them I was going to talk to a group of college kids, they probably would have laughed.
Someday I'm going to get a speaker here that says they were a fantastic student in high school. We haven't had one yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of our speakers. Ridge Burns, he said, when I graduated high school, I read at a 6th grade level.
Yeah.
So that was Ridge Burns, like a month
ago.
I
don't know what my level was, but I was definitely very low level reading too. I had dyslexia, so I had really worked hard to try to overcome my dyslexic kind of issues with reading, and so reading's never been like an enjoyable thing for me. I kind of learned how to do audible and audio reading, and of course. So anyway, so I would just say that in high school I struggled with just paying attention, and I went to Westmont College up in Santa Barbara. After my first year at Crafton, I transferred into Westmont, and I was just working every summer as much as I could work. I actually started a detail business when I was my last year of college. So my last summer I did that, and
detailing cars?
Detailing cars, yeah.
Okay.
And so I really have like a restorative kind of like thing that I love, like restoration of taking things apart and kind of putting them back together. I restored some Volkswagens in high school. And
Did your dad teach you that? Where'd you learn how to work on cars?
No, one of my dad's friends, Jim, who I worked for in high school, he was like a machine shop guy, and he kind of got me going on restoring cars. But I had a passion for cars back, kind of back from probably before high school. Before I started to drive, I just loved cars, loved Volkswagens in the end, and so, yeah, I would say just I worked for a bunch of people, and I think one thing about working, I always think it's really important. Like I always tell we have 4 kids, and I always tell them, like, hey, one of the best things about working is actually having bad bosses, because some of your worst bosses are actually the best bosses in the long run, because you remember, like, hey, I don't want to be that way, and I don't want to talk to people that way, I don't want people to feel that way, and so that was really a blessing for me, just to be around just 4 or 5 bosses before I kind of started my own detail business. And when I say started my own detail business, I mean just working for myself, basically,
So you treated yourself really well.
Yeah.
After that, that's good.
I actually got paid last, yeah. There's only one of us in the building, yeah. And so that was really fun. I mean, I felt like that was a little piece of my dream. So when I got out of college, I worked for a very entrepreneurial guy, just huge kind of growth company. We were doing this event marketing for air shows. So we're doing 200 air shows across the country, and we're doing food and novelties, and I got into the division of marketing, and we had just great sponsors. We had General Motors and Kraft General Foods, and I got to work around all these brand managers. And a lot of these larger companies, the way they structure a company like Kraft General Foods is they'll have like a brand manager that manages Kraft singles or mayonnaise, or you've got like Bullseye barbecue sauce. But we started working with all these brands, and we started working with brand managers, and that kind of gave me a real just passion for brands. And so that's one of the things I think I brought to Proline. I got to, one of the problems with Proline, I met my wife when I was working in the air show business, and so it became really clear that I had to get off the road, because that was like just a crazy amount of travel, like probably 40 to 45 weekends a year that I was on the road. And so it was really fun, but when I met my wife, we were dating, and she told me, hey, you got 1 more year of that job, and then it's got to go. So anyway, so we actually transitioned to Proline. I took a job as a marketing manager at Proline, and still that dream of having my own business was still in my head. I wasn't sure what it looked like, though. And so when I got there, the owner, who wasn't the founder, but he was like one of the co-founders, Joe Warren, he actually, I came to work for him, and I really was just going to be a marketing manager for him. And what I realized quickly is that his heart kind of wasn't in the business anymore. Business has kind of outgrown him, and I just started doing stuff. And he wasn't showing up every day, and I was showing up, and so I just really had a chance, probably in the first 2.5 years, to really take over the management of the company, and that happened pretty quick. And then probably by the 3rd year, we'd already started talking about becoming partners and buying half the company from him. And so we did that, and then we navigated this whole world of buy-sells and trying to figure out how to get an owner to transition out of the company. And over a 7-year period, we bought the company from Joe, and yeah, it's kind of just total dream come true.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say I was probably a bit of a nightmare manager in the first 10 years. You can imagine one of the things that happened with a truck stop that I didn't tell you guys about is the truck stop closed down. So my dad took this job to be to head up a private Christian school, be a head of school for this Christian school. He left his brother in charge, and the brother, just some circumstances, the oil embargo in the late 70s, like a lot of these challenges hit the business pretty heavy, and they lost the business. So as a 12-year-old, I remember specifically going to the door like that, like 2 double doors with a chain across them, and that was a truck stop. It was closed up. And so that's probably one of my leadership challenges for sure, is this like real mentality of scarcity. I would say just because I watched a vibrant, like great business that our family owned, and something that I'd grown up, painting the walls and, flipping cheeseburgers, and next thing it's gone. And so.
So why didn't that scare you out of wanting to be in business?
Because I just always thought I could do it better. I thought, I had by that time I had seen some things in my dad. I realized, okay, well, he's a great vision, great, entrepreneur, but I felt like I'd already done enough around other businesses where I started to feel like I could run my own business. I think this guy I worked for right out of college that had the air show business, I mean, Jim, like when I was there, he won Entrepreneur of the Year and at USC. And so it was a big deal. We went down and heard his story, but I'd been around him for 3 years, and I started feeling like, wow, like I could do what he's doing. I think I felt like he had given me some confidence about just So there's actually three men in my life that kind of invested in my leadership. And the first one was my coach when I was 15 years old. And he said, I don't know why, but I was a sophomore, I think, at the time. I was playing soccer for him. And he said, you know, he just said this comment, I think it was something effective, like, hey, Todd, I think you're going to be a leader someday. You know, you got to get prepared to be a leader. And he said that, and I think that really stuck with me. I think the second leader that I really heard when I was in college, you know, I was really struggling with college at Westmont. I was okay at the business classes, but I was struggling with religious studies and, you know, some of the like philosophy kind of classes at Westmont. And I had this business professor. He said, and you guys are going to laugh at this, but he said, Todd, don't worry. He said, you know, you're not an A student, but A students, they work in education. So A students, like, they go to work at schools. He goes, and B students, they work for C students. So that means you're going to be a manager, you know. And so
they work for C students.
They work for C students. That's what he said. So so that was very encouraging too. I always carried that with me. And then
Mark gives that.
That's not what you wanted to hear. Sorry.
So many of the speakers say things like that. No, really, you need to work hard.
And so then, then I think the third was this Jim Breen. You know, just working for him right out of college, I just like saw somebody who was an entrepreneur, somebody I really looked up to, and I just felt like we did, in that business, we did a lot of negotiation with these larger companies. We go into a company like General Motors, and we're trying to negotiate for a, you know, $500 to $1 million contract. And I got to be around him when he was doing this negotiation, and I just felt like this, like, wow, this is not my personality, but you know, I see this is what you have to do sometimes in business. You have to negotiate. You have to try to make a deal work. And so, yeah, so I think that, you know, the idea of buying the business was just in my head, I think, when I got to Proline. I just felt like, you know, this company's going to struggle without somebody who's really engaged in what's happening here. And so, yeah, I got involved with ownership.
So when I hear you talk about, you know, things you learn from your dad, things you learn from Jim, things you learn from all of these people in your life, including bad bosses. I'm just curious what you would say to a room full of young adults, college students. We tell them all the time that you've got to build some sort of a professional network. You've got to have mentors, people that you can learn from. Can you just talk a little bit about how did you think about learning at that time in your life from mentors, from people? How did you position yourself? Were you conscious of, you know what, I'm going to learn as much as I can from this bad boss and then take that and go somewhere else? Or was that unconscious? Or, you know, what would you tell these guys about that aspect of?
Yeah, I would say that I was really motivated. I mean, as difficult as school was for me, and maybe my dyslexia and just like being slow reader and like just feeling slow at school. But when I got to work, I was just pushed really hard. I worked really hard. I just tried to be the best, you know, employee that I could be, the best team member I could be. I tried to like sweat the details and just I think that I think that's how you can, you know, you can really grow into bigger roles in wherever you land. And I think a lot of like what I hear today is, and I mean I see it when we interview candidates for positions. So we have about 56 people, and you can imagine in the beginning, like I wasn't very good at hiring. Probably wasn't very good at onboarding. A lot of the, you know, challenges of just bringing people into the company, and I probably didn't have the greatest like managers in place, you know, go back 20 years ago. So yeah, so I've been with the company 26 years. This was 26 years ago. So I was 25 years old when we first started buying into the company. So it's been a long road of just processing the ownership. But I would say just you hear a lot of candidates talk about like, hey, I want to do something I'm really passionate about. I want to do something that you know, that I really dream of doing. And I think a lot of my first jobs, I don't think they were that at all. I think they were just like, I had an opportunity to get a paycheck. And I just, you know, like that air show business, when they hired me, they didn't have a position in the marketing place. So they just said, hey, we don't have, I really wanted to work in the marketing division. I wanted to work with the air shows. They said they didn't have that. So actually I took a $10 an hour job, which, you know, getting out of college and getting a $10 an hour job was not what I was dreaming of, was not what I kind of imagined, but I just said, yeah, I'll take that job. And it was a job actually selling pretzels and churros on the beach in Santa Barbara. So there's this thing on Saturday and Sunday called Chase Pond Park. It's an art show.
Okay, so.
And these guys had two locations, and they said, why don't you come and run these 2 locations for us?
So you had a college degree.
Yep.
And after you earned your college degree, you sold pretzels on the beach.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Where was your head at with that? Why did you take that?
Why did I take that? Because I wanted to, like, I kind of wanted to try to figure out how I could stay in Santa Barbara. And I had an internship with this air show company, and I knew I liked the marketing department, but they didn't have a role for me after my internship. And so, yeah, I just felt like, you know, I could provide. I could provide, you know, the rent. I could make rent. I could live in Santa Barbara, and I could do a good job for them with that. And really what I did is I made that business like my own little business, you know. And I think that's a little, like, one of the things that I think I became really good at after a while is I just started playing that game everywhere I went. Like, just said, hey, this is going to be like my business. I'm gonna fix that cart up. I'm going to put new graphics on it. I'm going to get a new umbrella. I'm going to get new signage. And so what started happening is I made all these changes, and then the owners started coming by on the weekends, these 2 guys, Paul and Jim, and they basically started taking notice of, like, hey, that cart, like, has never looked that good, you know, and hey, like, the sales on the cart, what's the sales on your cart last weekend? Oh, well, we've never done those kind of sales, you know, and so we started, you know, before Monster Energy, it was Hanson Juices, and we had Hanson was one of our sponsors, and we had, you know, so we started doing some things with ice cream, and, you know, I don't know, I just enjoyed treating it like it was my own, and then that got me noticed, and I got a job in the marketing, like, you know, 3 months later. They sent me on the road the first time, and
I've heard other CEOs call that an ownership mentality.
Yeah.
And they look for that when they're interviewing. They're looking for employees who are going to have an ownership mentality with the responsibilities that they have in their job.
Yeah. Yep. And that's really, like, what we used to have that as one of our values, ownership attitude. I think it's sometimes hard to explain because a lot of people say, well, I'm not really an owner. But, you know, ownership's not always that great. You know, I think people have a fantasy that ownership's like about, like, oh, it's going to be so good. But there's a downside to ownership. There's, like, I mean, I always tell my other business friends that, hey, you guys, we get paid last, we eat last. You know, we should have that kind of, like, mindset. And I think that that's not the way most people associate ownership. Most people ownership, like, hey, I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to get something for myself. And I think that's the challenge of being an owner, is just changing that mindset to, like, no, we're going to, like, pay everybody first, and whatever's left over, we're going to hopefully have some.
So I've got one more question for you, and then I want to ask if you guys have any questions. But when you are interviewing, you've talked a little bit about what you look for in new employees. When you're interviewing someone, what are the things that ring the bell for you when you're looking at someone?
Yeah, that's really easy because, like, as we've got better here, we kind of ran into, you guys ever heard of Patrick Lencioni? So Lencioni writes these fables, and they're stories, and then you kind of, like, learn from the story. But he wrote this book called The Ideal Teammate, and I love, like, what he says. He says it's humble, hungry, and smart. So humble is just that, you know, you consider the team more important than yourself. You're focused on others' needs and over yourself. That you're a contributor without needing the ego, like recognition. The hungry is really just about a hunger to get it done, to drive it through to completion, to finish strong. And then the smart is not like a book smart, or it's smarts in just your intelligence with each other. So your ability to understand people, to understand situations, and to interact with those situations, and not not hurt people in the process, to bring people along with you, is really what smart's all about, is to be a collaborative kind of relational
smarts.
Yeah. So those are the three things we're looking for. I mean, the fourth thing we look for is innovation, because we love creativity, and just we develop 60 to 70 products a year. So we have a strong push for innovation, and we want that in manufacturing, we want it in packaging, we want it in product development. So those are our 4 that we're hiring to.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Any questions? Whitney.
What would be your best advice for someone who is wanting to start their own business, but is kind of, I don't know if hesitant's the right word, but kind of nervous about getting that going and getting into the industry and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I never did it. I never started a business. I've tried to start a couple businesses inside our business, and I've failed. So I'm not a really great startup example. I feel like I'm this restoration kind of thing. I liked taking somebody else's business and taking it apart and putting it back together. Yeah, so I think, before you start a business, you just I would think you need experience. You need some experience. If you want to open a coffee shop, you better go work at some good coffee shops and understand, what they're doing well at the shops, what they're doing well with people. I mean, our sons have all worked at In-N-Out, and I feel like, there's organizations like that are really good organizations as far as just seeing what they're doing, how they bring people in the company, how they talk to the teammates. I mean, they're just, In-N-Out does an amazing job with people. They really, but anyway, so I think they got great safety programs. They got, so I think being around other companies that have those kind of programs that you can learn from, and then I think make it related to what you're interested in too. As far as if you're interested in, like I say, have a coffee shop, you better really have a passion for the details of the coffee and the details of what you're delivering to the customer.
Yeah. Always be learning.
Yeah.
Always be learning. Okay, very good. Matt.
What is the thing you've enjoyed most working with ProLine?
Yeah, I mean, I like the innovation side. I really enjoy, I do a lot of the sales, so I'm out talking to customers, and I like taking ideas from the shop level, like a hobby shop level, and bringing them back to the, and then actually seeing those products created and being able to bring it back to the shop and go, hey, this is your idea, And I think I've had a few good ideas, but usually not. Usually my ideas are not great. So, to be honest.
And your grades weren't very good.
Yeah, my grades are good.
Shining examples.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hey, so I got something for you guys real quick. This is something that really changed my life about 15, 16 years ago. One of my friends really challenged me on my daily devotionals. And his point was hey, you eat breakfast, you slept all night, take care of your body, and are you taking time in the morning for your soul and your time with the Lord? And so anyway, it's called 7 Minutes with God. It's just the simplest little format. It starts with an opening prayer. You read a little bit of God's Word, and then you go to a closing prayer. And it says in the book that if you do this regularly, it'll expand. You'll want more of that time. And I can tell you, if I go back 15 years ago, I had things in my life that I'm not proud of, that I was really not getting better with. I wasn't resolving some issues. And I was, at that time, I had 4 kids, and I had still a young wife, and we're just, there's a lot of challenges with those things, let alone trying to run a business on top of that. And this 7 Minutes with God is really just been a switch. I mean, it's amazing, the things that I really hated about myself, and I just knew God wasn't excited about those things either. I just feel like He's changed my heart towards that. So I brought these for you guys if you want to grab one, and I'll get you more. I got business cards here if you want to email me if you don't have one. But anyway, it's like Hayne Balcom. I don't know if you guys know Hayne, but Hayne was a mentor of mine before Jeff Abbott. And so this is his idea, but it's really cool. It's been really excellent.
Cool. Take advantage. Take advantage of me.